Welcome to Survive in Real Life Zombie Edition. We hope you watched our last episodes and we talked about why we wanted to talk about zombies. So in today's edition, we're talking about day one. What would you do in day one to survive a zombie apocalypse? We have 3 tips for you guys today. Number 1, get to safety. Number 2, make a plan. And number 3, be resourceful.
You know, the opening moments of a zombie apocalypse, there are so many different scenarios that it could be, right? Like maybe you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you turn a corner and there's a zombie horde, or maybe it's like the slow coughing, build up pandemic thing. It's hard to figure out when a zombie apocalypse even starts, let alone kind of what you would do. But I think there are some common themes, right?
I think you would see this is kind of big, but I think on a grand scale, you would see everything start shutting down, like planes falling, buses crashing. Because if you live in a big central city like Toronto, Ottawa, there's so much population at any one time. Now, if the zombie virus spreads rapidly, slowly, that kind of comes into play. But think about, you got how many people on the subway? What if the driver's a zombie? What happens to the sub? What happens to an airplane? There's so many. I think it'd be so big right off the bat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's an element of luck in surviving a zombie apocalypse. Absolutely. You're on the bus, buddy behind you, all of a sudden turns into a zombie. You're done. It's that fast. But I think the first thing you would have to do is just find a way to get to safety. When a zombie comes walking down the street, there's going to be mass panic. Or when society starts to shut down, there's going to be rioting, looting, just complete and utter chaos. And if you decide to participate in that, you're putting yourself at risk. So I think you just got to find a safe place to be, right?
So you're saying after watching years of Walking Dead, you don't feel like you're trained and ready for day one?
Well, it's like we said in the first video, there were so many different possibilities for what a zombie could look like. I don't think it's possible to really be prepared. And yeah, I think those tough guys that think they can take on, anything are the first to get eaten.
Oh my God, I'd be crapping my pants if I walked into a horde of zombies. I'd be that guy creeped into a corner in a closet, hiding and praying that this is ended.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna be proactive and actually try to survive, then what would our plan be? What would our safety locations be?
A place where you can sort of watch your own back, right? I guess on one hand you would want to say you want to be able to get out. On the other hand, you want to be able to sort of not have so many entrances that they could come in and surprise you. You see that a lot in these zombie movies, right? They get in through a basement door or something. So I try to get to some place where, there's a clear exit, but I can watch and know sort of where they're coming from. A place that's quiet, away from some of the action, that has walls, that are stable. I wouldn't want to be in a shack.
Would you say getting the high ground is important? Would you want to be closer to the bottom floor, main level?
You know what? That's a good question. I think main level.
Are you going to Obi-Wan it, or are you going to Darth Vader it?
It didn't work out so good for Anakin, but I'll take the low ground in this case. Again, what happens if there's zombies in your building and you got to jump down 5 stories? I'm not Spider-Man.
I agree, but getting the safety, you're right. And it's weird that you and I had that safety plan put into place since we've been kids, right? We always determined that there'd be a central place in our lives, no matter where we were, that we'd meet up, say this is our safety place. And I'm pretty sure, we said, it was a cottagey location where there's not many people around, access is limited, and nobody really knows where you are. But
yeah,
you're right.
Totally. So I think it doesn't matter what it is, if it's zombies or any sort of scenario like that, that's a good one for me. I just like the idea of being away from the city. But Absolutely. In the first day, I think it's premature to make that, to just pick up and go immediately. I think you've got to collect yourself.
We touched upon it in the first video that we have to keep a cool head, right?
Yeah.
Don't panic. But how do you do that? How do you come face to face with a horde of zombies, or watch family members, loved ones turn into zombies and keep cool and make a plan? But I think that's where being prepared comes into play. Like, is your life worth saving? Then get to safety.
Well, look, if the zombie apocalypse happens and your first reaction is to run into a grocery store to grab toilet paper, you're not going to make it.
I'd grab hand sanitizer first. Just saying.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Spread. Stop the spread.
I bet you those people who are hoarding toilet paper and hand sanitizer are just like, I prepared for this exact moment.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. But I mean, and that's what I mean by finding a place of safety is not long-term safety, because I think to survive the apocalypse, you've got to be on the move. And I think in the next video, we're going to cover that. But find a place where you can at least collect yourself, right? Calm yourself down, get a clear head, and make that plan for what comes next.
And that's a good question. What does come next? So you're in a safe location. You lock your doors. You barricade yourself in. You have access to outside if need be. You can watch what's going on. What's the next plan? What is your next step? So we talked about our point number 2. Our survival tip number 2 is to make a plan. Now, what's our plan entail?
Well, I mean, ultimately, where do you want to get to? What do you want to do? Do you think that staying put is the best option for you? For me, the first part of the plan is assessing what's going on around you. Knowing, what am I dealing with? What are these zombies? What are my vulnerabilities? Am I with, for example, in my case, I have family, right? I have my 2 young kids. So, that's going to slow me down, but I need to understand. Well, no, but I'm not going to leave them behind, right? So I got to understand what that means and plan accordingly. A lot of this is going to be just assessing your situation, and going into this knowing, okay, well, if I've got 2 little kids, one, I can never rely on quiet. I can't exactly rely on speed because I got to carry these kids with me. My 2-year-old can't keep up. Things like that.
My mind would go right to food. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could survive 3 hours without food, and neither can my kids. They have snacks galore. So imagine the zombie apocalypse. You're right about the quiet. Your kids can't keep quiet. They'll never understand what's going on in the world. And all they're going to be doing is, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty. And what's probably the most valuable resource in a post-apocalyptic era? Fresh water. You know what I mean? So my plan would be at least assess what kind of food and water you have access to. Fill up jugs, fill up whatever you need. Maybe not to carry with you, but at least to have, and if there's nothing left, if grocery stores are getting looted, if everything's getting looted and destroyed, at least have something in reserve to save you. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, but this is part of it too, right? And this kind of plays into our last tip, which is being resourceful. I don't think you can rely on grocery stores. I think that when things hit the fan, that's the first place that people are going to go, and it's going to be just a massive risk. Yeah. Whether there are zombies that are going to appear there or, spread there, or if just the people themselves are going to be violent. They will be. They're going to fight for the things that they want. So you have to be able to look around and find things that maybe, you're not going to get to the hardware store. So what can you find in a shed that's going to help as like a weapon, for example? In terms of food, what can you eat that, maybe it's not the most delicious thing that ever there was, but what can you take with you that's going to get you mobile and get you through the first day and the first few days?
I think that's what scares me is if the world was going through an apocalypse like that, is you have to change your mindset. And it sucks. And I don't want to be a selfish person, but you have to put your family first and foremost. So those people who are looting, who are going to the grocery store and grabbing what they can and pushing people down and not worrying about them, maybe they are the ones to survive. Maybe they are the Negans of the world. Is that something that we want to be? Are we that kind of resourceful person? I don't know.
I think, if you look at a show like The Walking Dead, right, that's one of the big themes with Rick. Do you have to be the bad guy to protect the ones that you love and to survive? And he struggles with that, every other season. It's a struggle for him. And I think it's a real question. I like to think that you can get by without being, without hurting other people. But at the same time, in a situation like this, there are limited resources, and my son's not going hungry.
Right.
Well, I mean, he will be hungry. We'll all be hungry. It's a crisis. But I mean, he's not going to starve to death, right? I'm going to make sure he's fed. So what does that mean? It's an interesting question.
I'd like to have faith in humanity and hope for the best, but I don't think that'd be the case, to be honest. But you know what? You kind of see it both ways. Look at everything that's happening in our world right now and how many people are sacrificing their lives, their jobs to be around people who are sick and dying, who need help. And there are those who sacrifice. And I want to think positive and say that we come together as a nation to survive another disaster like this. But there's always going to be those people out there who don't care, who want to put themselves first, and who don't care about hurting other people. They just want to watch the world burn, just to survive, to get their fix, just to make it through another day.
I think it's a really good point. We're talking about a zombie apocalypse, which is like the most extreme, kind of situation that we can think of. But if you look at what's going on with COVID-19 and how the early days of the quarantine kickstarted, you see exactly what we're talking about in a situation that is significantly less extreme than a zombie apocalypse, where you had, I remember this one news article where this couple went to the grocery store, got there as soon as it opened, and went and bought the entire meat section, like 2 carts full of meat. They bought everything.
How big is their freezer? Like, are they going to eat that all? Are they going to share the wealth? Like, did they buy a freezer to go along with this? Like, what was their plan? Is this like if you kind of implement our survival tips to them, they're not talking about getting, in a safe location. They're not making a good plan, and they're definitely not being resourceful, or they're being over resourceful and they're stealing from everybody else. So those are the people that we don't want to be around.
Well, exactly.
You guys are the first to go to zombie apocalypse.
Well, they're the ones who are going to be holding on to their stuff, right? Get off my lawn. Whereas for me, my house in that situation, hey, goodbye. I don't need it. I need to be on the move. I live in the city. This will be overrun. So, yeah, I think resourcefulness is really an important part of survival on day one. Is being able to look around you and find the things that are going to get you through to the next day, where you can start making your way towards whatever it is, your goals that you've set in terms of your survival plan. Safe
location. And like being resourceful too, it's not just about food, shelter, but what about even a radio? Because like internet's gone, phone lines are going to be down. Going on zombie shows and movies again, what's the next best step? The radio, right?
It's actually, I think we should, and later on in this series, because we'll be doing a number of videos on this, they're going to get into more details on individual things in an apocalypse like this, like what can you eat and like what weapons would you use and stuff like that. But I think we should do one on this, is like what are the skills that people just maybe don't think about anymore that they should have. Like if you had to operate a radio, and I'm not talking about log on to the internet, you can go to a radio website or turn on your car radio, but actually be able to set up and use or maintain a radio.
Yeah, catch radio.
That's going to be a survival skill.
That's why I haven't thrown out my old ghetto blaster. The ones that in the 80s used to carry on their shoulder. Man, I still got that somewhere in the closet. I took it out once for the kids, and they're just like, what is this? And I'm like, don't let it come in handy one day. It'll come in handy. I'm actually saving it for the apocalypse, let's be honest. But
absolutely. So I think we should get into our bonus tip here. And our bonus tip is just to be careful who you trust and who you take with you in the early days. Because there are people that are going to cause you more harm than good.
Yeah.
You're tied to people like your family who you care about, and they're part of your circle, and that's not a question. You look after them. But let's say you're in a situation where there are a few other strangers. Do you take them in with you to survive as a group? Or do you notice that one of those people tends to panic and might just be a liability to you and your survival? Those are the types of questions we need to be thinking about.
I think it'd be really hard on day one to be able to properly assess who's a threat and who's not. But you're right, read the situation. Is this person panicking? Is he pushing somebody? Do they have little kids? Do you know the person? Do they seem kind of sketchy? Like, what decision are you basing this off of? Like you said, I would trust my family and my closest friends first and foremost. But at the end of the day, we have kids and a wife to think about first. Those would be our priorities. And then you and I meeting each other halfway, and whatever happens, happens, right?
Yeah, starting our survival collective, you know.
I hope you're a good fisherman, because I definitely am not.
Absolutely. And I know you're an expert with bears, so we're safe.
I could wrestle one with my bare hand, obviously. All right. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to Survive in Real Life Zombie Edition. We'd actually really love to hear what your tips would be to survive in your first day of the zombie apocalypse. And if you like our tips, please like, share, and subscribe to our page and come back more weekly for more Surviving for Real Life.
Thanks, guys.